I want to take a moment. I know some of you are used to kind of just sitting in your seats, but the whole point of this holiday is to kind of get joy down in your toes. And as the Spirit has moved you, it's considered a good thing. And that really plays into the spirit of this holy day, this holiday of Hanukkah. And I want to share a little brief teaching to you about the miracle of the light of Hanukkah. It's a teaching by Rabbi Denise Eger, who's a teacher at the Israel Koshetsky Beit Midrash at Yeshiva Har Etzion, just outside of Yerushalayim. And it's a very important idea about what the miracle of Hanukkah really was. Now, I know that all of you are familiar with the story of what's the miracle. It's that little jar of oil that the priests found, the one jar that was only going to last for the first night, and of course, it lasted all the way through the whole 8 days. And according to the rabbis, this is the reason that's recorded in the Talmud in Shabbat 21b. But the truth is that is something that came about much later in Jewish history, over almost 1,000 years after the story of the Maccabees. So the guys that wrote that story weren't around at the time that the story actually happened. And the truth is, this is a story truly that happened in history, the story of the Maccabees. We know this from outside sources, not just Sefer Maccabeim, the books of Maccabees 1 and 2, but even Josephus, the great ancient historian, tells the story of the Hasmonean kings who trace their ancestry to the great Maccabees. But light and fire are an important part, because what did the Maccabees do? After they defeated the Syrian Greeks in a 3-year, very cruel, frankly very bloody war, they defeated the greatest army in the world through guerrilla war tactics. And still today, did you know at West Point, there is a statue of Judah Maccabee as one of the chief military strategists of all times, of a great hero. But the miracle of Hanukkah is really in the light. Because if you think back to the time of the Mishkan in the desert, when Moses told the children of Israel they had to build a portable tabernacle in the desert. If we read in the Exodus when they dedicated the Mishkan, how many days of dedication were there? It's a dead giveaway. 8. The first 7 days, each of the tribes brought special sacrifices and blessings. But on the 8th day, it was really until the 8th day that the Mishkan was dedicated, the tabernacle in the desert. And on the 8th day, the Torah tells us that a fire came down from heaven, and the glory of God filled the Mishkan. And that moment, the Shekhinah, God's presence who dwells among us, took up residence in the Mishkan, God's glory. So too, when King Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, there was how many days of dedication? Take a guess. 8. And it wasn't till the 8th day that then too a fire came down from heaven, and the glory of God filled the Mishkan with light. And that is how we Jews always knew that God's presence was with us. And so too the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586, and for 40 years we lived in exile in Babylonia. And a small group came back after 40 years, and the Persians had conquered the Babylonians and gave the Jews permission. And so Nehemiah kind of built this quick rebuilding. It wasn't as grand as Solomon's temple, but there they had another dedication of the altar. And how many days does the book of Nehemiah tells us was the party? 8 days. But again, actually the second book of Maccabees opens up with a description of Nehemiah's temple being refilled with the light of the Shekhinah. And so too, when the Maccabees, once they reconquered the Temple Mount. And they cleaned up. The book of Maccabees is very clear about how they worked hard to clear the desecrations of the idols and of the way that the Holy Temple Mount was destroyed. And they put everything back in place. And they relit the menorah, the golden, beautiful menorah in the temple. And they celebrated for how many days? 8 days. And on the 8th day, what happened? The holy light of God filled the Mishkan once again. The fire of the menorah and the light of the menorah represents God's presence in our midst. And when we light the menorah, we're supposed to feel and we're supposed to believe our faith is grounded in the hope that God walks with us and dwells with us in good times and frankly in not such good times. Just as God dwelt with the Maccabees, even in their darkest moments when they were oppressed by the Syrian Greeks. That's the message for our day and time when you light your Chanukkah for the rest of the nights. And maybe you have doubts, and maybe you say, well, I'm an atheist, I don't really believe in that stuff. And, I don't know, maybe God exists, maybe God doesn't exist, I'm Jewish by culture, I like latkes, I like sukkot, chopped liver maybe. Don't bother me with all this God stuff. It is the light of faith that kept our people alive, even when they had doubts. So even if you doubt whether God exists or doesn't exist, you're in good company with the rest of the Jews. Because we've always doubted. We've always said, prove it. For our ancestors, the proof was the light in the ancient temple. And for us, the proof is that you're all here, continuing to celebrate being Jewish, no matter where you are, no matter what you do, by the menorah that you light, whether it's here or at home. That's the proof that God is still with us. Blessing you, blessing our community, and we pray to bring light and peace to the whole world.